Hey ya, this is Sydney with Let's Get Through It Astrology. I'm here to take you through the astrological weather day by day for a bit of play-by-play. My intention is to give you a little bit of a vibe check so that you can show up on planet Earth as your very best self. I'm recording this from beautiful and sunny Oakland, California, so note that all of the times mentioned in this podcast are in Pacific Standard Time, so you'll want to adjust for wherever you are in the world. Okay, let's get through it. Hey, it's time to talk about February 11th through the 17th. That's Wednesday through Tuesday, 2026. We had a big week, y'all. We are definitely in eclipse season, eclipse week, the eclipse portal. I know that it's been really wild for me as a astrologer to watch various things, kind of pop off, come to light, seem very faded or very loud. Just a lot of things feel very, very loud in the world right now. I have the chart up for Wednesday. I do put the charts up on all of my visual podcasting, so you can follow along. I sometimes point things out, but I try to also be looking at all of you as if it matters. Okay, so first and foremost, what to watch out for this week. It sounds like we don't have a lot to watch out for, but these are big things that we are watching out for, so we just need to be mindful. On the 13th, we're going to have Saturn's ingress into Aries for the next 2.5 years. So happy Saturn return to all of our Saturn and Aries babies. I did write down, yes, Saturn return babies would be those models born in 1938 to 40, 1967 to 69, and 1996 to 1999. So now we are in a maturation point with this Saturn coming all the way around the zodiac into the very first sign as well. And so we also need to know that all of the cardinal risings, that's going to be Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, are going to have Saturn in an angle, a prominent angle. So these things can probably be felt a lot more intensely. So know that for you cardinal risings. And also, if you have your Saturn in any of the cardinal signs, again, that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you're going to be getting either the conjunction, the square, or the opposition, which are all stressful aspects, maybe except for the return, but I would argue yes. Saturn is considered in its fall in this sign, doesn't particularly like being here. Aries is a very fast sign, and Saturn is a very slow planet. So this already creates a discombobulation between things. I feel as if because of Saturn being in Pisces, it felt like time was just very dilated and strange and ephemeral. I think now we're going to get a quickening kind of feeling. And we're also going to be asked to master patience. We are going to have tests of our impulsivity and how we push ourselves forward and we put ourselves out there. So all of you cardinal sign risings and cardinal Saturn babies, I wish you all of the good luck in taking ultimate responsibility for your fate and for your karma. And just hang in there. I believe in you. All right, so we have Saturn's ingress. I will also talk about it more in our day by day. February 15th, we're going to have the sun square Uranus at 27 degrees. And this is just about on the eclipse degree, which is going to happen later this week. So I think it's all tied in with the eclipses. In fact, I think everything that happens for the most part this week and the next is very much tied in with the eclipse energy, which can be, fated turns of events and especially new, fresh beginnings that have to do with, people's personal liberation and new ideas and innovations and being freedom seeking and being with the collective, all sorts of things around that. So we are in this place where new beginnings are happening, and these are big and pivotal for all of our lives, but especially for those who have fixed placements, especially in those last degrees. Your chart is being pinged pretty intensely. So that Sun square Uranus at 27 degrees, almost the eclipse degree, is a third quarter square. And I think this is where things are suddenly forced into the light for us to be responsible for us to handle and to deal with. And this certainly, because the Sun has to do with authority, is a significator for authority. This could have to do with those we have placed in leadership. We know what's going on in the news right now. We know a lot of things with files are coming in still. And so this could be new information coming to light about leadership. February 16th, we're going to have Mercury trine Jupiter. This is a really nice, flowing, intuitive, watery, sensory, emotional trine. This is where our goals and our ideas are in alignment. You know, there can be like a psychic awareness around like what we're trying to do. This is expansive thought. It also feels very poetic, which is really nice. Mercury isn't in the best situation right now because it is in Pisces, which is detriment and fall. But with that trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter being a benefic, which is in its exaltation, I think during this time, these things around Mercury, conversations and things we're learning, things we're speaking, could behave a lot better in the world. Sorry for the sound. Today is a very loud day for some reason, so I'll do my best to fix that in post-editing, but who knows? It's kind of a game. On the 17th, this is also a biggie. In addition to Saturn's ingress, is we're going to have our solar annular eclipse at 28 Aquarius. Okay, so eclipses are fated occurrences. It's going to be with the North Node, so we can say these new beginnings are pointing us into our fated directions, or these new beginnings are really having to do with us boldly going forward in some sort of way. It's not about release, right? This is about movement forward, where we point our sights to. So later on in this podcast, I am going to go through the zodiac by rising sign, so you know where this new beginning has the potential to be happening for you, so we can be aware and take advantage of this new starting point for us. And I'll also mention where Saturn is now going to be in your chart by whole sign, so that we know what area of life we now need to be very, very responsible in, to clean house, essentially. A little bit more about that Saturn and Aries ingress. It's going to happen on Friday at 4:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it's ruled by a Mars in Aquarius, which is important because we need to know that even though Saturn's in its fall in Aries, it's going to be ruled by Mars, because Aries is ruled by Mars, in Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn. So there's this kind of mutual reception that's happening here in the beginning of Saturn's ingress. So I think that there's a little bit more cooperation. Maybe Saturn's behaving a little bit better than we would expect it to, with Saturn being in Aries. The Mars in Aquarius signature is usually socially conscious action, fighting for humanitarian causes, rebellious aggression. Actions that are very future focused. We know that there's a lot of technological advancements that are coming to life. I think about like using technology in order to fight, right? And we know that there's a lot of things going on with AI and the various things with Palantir, and the other AI companies that are trying to take over our world. And I think that with Saturn and Aries, I'm hoping for some sort of reckoning around those who wish to take these bold actions and to do their work in war, in fighting and strife. We'll see. during the ingress for Saturn and Aries, Mars is going to be in a stressful aspect to Jupiter, It's going to ask us to make some adjustments around what we're taking action in. What are our goals here? What are we really trying to accomplish here? So also taking that into consideration. And I also think with that quincunx to Jupiter, we have the opportunity here and we should not take it to overcompensate in some sort of way. And Saturn in Aries really it has this moment of like, well, I'm going to be super responsible for myself, for my identity, for me, and, take care of number one. But sometimes maybe that's not always the good thing. And we need to take responsibility for our own actions while also trying to work with the collective. Oh, okay. So let's move forward. I'm going to go through the day by day. And the day by days do go up on Instagram. I got rid of my TikTok because the evil AI overlords were really there. Not to say that they're not in Instagram, but it's also where I get the most viewership. So we're looking at the chart for February 11th, which is Wednesday. Wednesday is Mercury's day. Mercury not doing the best in Pisces, in detriment in fall, but it is with the North Node really trying to point us into some sort of maybe information that we're gathering, communication that point us into the future, and, a future where we're a part of a whole, being compassionate. There's something here that can say, information about immigration, sacrifice. Mercury in Pisces is a very intuitive thinker. It thinks ephemerally and paint strokes and poetry and not necessarily in concrete, linear thought. But that lack of linearity in this moment maybe is what we really need to do. We need to think through our feeling and our intuition in order to find our way forward. So we do not have a lot of aspects today, but we do have some really nice working aspects today. So in terms of trying to really traverse this week and get things done, I think that this is the day that you should really try to knock things off of the list to get things done. 5:42 a.m., essentially when we're waking up, in the day, we have the moon sextile Mars. Take action, go forward, do what you need to do. This is just nice for, getting up out of your feet and getting your butt out of the door. So really, really nice there. 8:17 a.m. we have the moon quincunx Jupiter. Be careful of some going overboard with, your feeling, or especially around emotional adjustment around maybe the goals and actions you're trying to take. And especially don't overreach at this time, right? And it's just in the morning. It's just, moon and Sag in general really wants to just boldly go where no one man's gone before. And maybe we just rein it in a little bit. You boldly go where some others have gone before, but you're not necessarily adept at yet. Sun sextile Chiron can mean healing, empathetic. There's a little bit of sensitivity in the air, but it's not a bad thing, right? It's not a bad thing to be intuitive or empathetic by any means. I think we all need to really learn the empathy game. Really learn how to sit in that space so we can take into consideration everybody else around us and ourselves, and to be witness, to each other and to ourselves as well. Moon trine Chiron later in the evening really allows us to be, in a good place with our sensitivity and maybe do some emotional healing. It's really, the evening feels like we understand things about where we're at and how we got here, if that makes sense. And we're also willing to do some of the inner work to go forward, in the next days in a better way. February 12th, Thursday. Thursday is Jupiter's day. Jupiter still retrograde. I cannot wait for it to go forward. In Cancer, this inner expansion of feeling and intuitiveness. I've been wondering more and more what it's doing for each person individually. And I wonder if this inner emotional expansion is hopefully aiding in all of our emotional awakening to other people and to what true security and safety really feels like. The world is rapidly changing. We are finding out things from before in earlier parts of our history that impact kind of how we look at that, like a memory, right? Where we're like, actually, it wasn't so safe then, right? And now we need to find a new sense of inner security to make the changes to have a better life, a better future, better home for all of us. This is a more stressful aspect sort of day. We're going to get it almost feels like electricity in the sky and an awareness of what our limits are. Moon sextile Uranus. This can just be needing to make some sort of sudden shift or sudden change of habit, or just feeling shocked, and it's so early in the morning, but we do have this moon square Saturn. This is always some sort of reality check, an emotional reality check with like what we have to do. And this is at the very, very last degree, right? Saturn hasn't gone into Aries yet. So this is maybe the reality check around what Saturn and Pisces was for us, each collectively. We were being asked to, in some ways, master and understand the various illusions that are around us. And maybe to bring some of those illusions into reality. But now we are being confronted with how many things were not real. And maybe this moment is where we're like, oh, it feels heavy. It feels intense. It feels a little bit like an emotional crisis. We're having the moon go into Capricorn at 11:44 a.m. This is the boss babe moon, right? It needs to, take responsibility and to do what it needs to do to take care of all of the business things around it. It takes account of things. It can also feel a little bit isolated or alone. It's very much a fuck it, I'll do it myself sort of moon. Our emotional baseline or in our attentions now turn to things around responsibility, authority, and business. 12:43, we're going to have that moon square Neptune, which can feel like a bit of disillusionment, can feel a bit confusing, maybe even a bit overwhelmed. Things take on a fuzzy tone. We can't really emotionally see ourselves through something. So just chill out here. We do have some nice aspects later on in the day that'll let the moon and let our feeling flow in a better way. We do have Mars quincunx Jupiter. This is going to be exact at 5:14 p.m. Whatever actions we're taking, we're going to make sure that we're not overstepping our boundaries here, and we're not shooting over the goal. Right? Maybe this is reassessing the actions we need to take in order to achieve our goal. We need to adjust something about what we're doing, how we're expending our energy. And maybe we're also learning that we need to learn a different piece of this story before we go forward. This can feel a bit frustrating because it is a frustrating, discombobulating energy. So we could be feeling frustrated. Moon sextile Venus happens at 6:22 p.m. And now we have this, it's almost like a quiet, more comfortable, introverted feeling. To me, it feels like I am taking care of all of the things that make me feel comfortable and safe. Perhaps I am engaging in ways to take care of, my relationships. It's pleasant. It's quiet. And I do think that with the moon being in Capricorn, there's a bit of a groundedness around all of the loving rose-colored glasses, needing to connect with it all. It's a nice aspect for the end of the day. So really sit into pleasantness. Try to do the things that you enjoy. Connect with people you love. Tell people you love them at this time. Friday, February 13th is Venus's day. It's also Friday the 13th, which, can be kind of as auspicious as well. Oh, Venus days are good for the arts, for pleasure, for relationship, and certainly for Saturn going into Aries. Oh my goodness. So today's biggest player is Saturn's ingress into Aries, which will not happen until 4:11 p.m. We do have a nice flowing aspect between the moon and Mercury in the morning, 10:17 a.m. We're able to really have the discussions to speak about what's going on with us. Our ideas are also in tune with the mind. It's in our feeling. They're working together. Have the conversation. Make the connection. A little bit of a frustrating aspect. We have the moon sesqui-square Uranus. Just feeling frustrated in the moment. And maybe you had this really good conversation, but it didn't quite get you to where you wanted to go. Biggest aspect of the day, Saturn ingresses into Aries, the sign of its fall. I'll put up the Saturn chart. Here's the ingress for Saturn into Aries, and you'll see that we are definitely and have been in the zone of Saturn's very close to perfect conjunction with Neptune, which is going to be the dissolving of various structures and things having to do with authority and government. This is where new visions come into reality. This is where the veil and structure are now playing this strange game, and we don't get to see clearly. What I think is so interesting about Saturn's ingress into Aries is that we don't really get an understanding of what Saturn in Aries is going to be for us until it's past its conjunction to Neptune. So everything around the actions we're taking, the ways that we are stepping up into authority, business ventures, all sorts of things like that could be feeling very fuzzy and confusing and not clear. Saturn with Neptune being the great dissolver, it's almost as if Saturn meets up with Neptune to have this moment of, take away the things that I have not been doing well, being responsible for, slip those things away so I can go and do this Saturn in Aries in a new way in a few months when it separates from Neptune. It's just such an interesting ingress. And also it's on the Aries point. We know that Aries point, this ingress has to do with something for the collective. We are all aware of this. We're watching full corporations and companies go under. We're watching a very strange change to our business sector. There's nothing worse than trying to find a job right now, I gotta tell you. So there's also that. The last aspect of the day is Moon opposite Jupiter at 7:27 p.m. Moon opposite Jupiter, indulgence is possible. And also this idea of like, I am holding it all together. There's a too much aspect to the moon coming in opposition with Jupiter that says like, I'm holding it all in. I'm trying to keep myself together here. And also there's an indulgence aspect. So don't overdo it. Whatever you're doing, don't overdo it. Overreact, overeat. Feelings and expressions at this point might be a little bit too much. Just hold it together. February 14th is Saturday. Saturday is Saturn's day. Saturn just went into Aries, and it is now very, very much in this conjunction to Neptune. They're now in the same sign, which is great, I guess, and also within very few minutes of each other. Saturn days are good for taking account and accountability, for being responsible for, doing the things you need to do to take care of your own personal business. Be patient on this day. Saturn is the arbiter of time. So, making good use of your time on this day as well. It also happens to be Valentine's Day. It's very interesting to have Saturn in Aries for Valentine's Day, but we do have at least Venus in Pisces, the ultimate lover girl. the Venus that wants to merge. It loves through merging and being in this like psychic awareness and connection to, and is this like deep, overwhelming feeling of the ocean and love. It's also rose-colored glasses. Venus is coming up to the North Node. It's pretty far at this point. Well, it's within range, but when planets come to the North Node, they have this tendency to kind of be more prominent. So there could be things around, women's issues coming up at this time. Things around love and relationships, I think, is really what I'm feeling here. In terms of what we could be doing for a Valentine's Day, I think that if you're going to spend time with your lover or your friends, we are definitely going to wait to have any sort of meaningful conversations until later in the afternoon. And I say that because we have a pretty sensitive square between Moon and Chiron. This is emotional sensitivity and potentially feeling like there's a wound here that's happening here. And let's avoid that on Valentine's Day if you're a person that celebrates it. Moon trine Uranus, that's quite lovely. It's exciting, sparkly. There can be some ideas coming forward. It's a change in habit, a change in circumstance. It's not bad. It's certainly better than that square to Chiron. The moon is going to enter Aquarius at 10:16 p.m. And what's nice about the moon in Aquarius, it's now, wants to be among the people. It's definitely, there's a sense of detachment that can happen here with the moon in Aquarius. And so I think that there's in rebelliousness, feeling different, set aside, apart. And I almost wonder if it's, the moon being in Capricorn is so very serious. And then, the moon in Aquarius kind of wants to, that's not mine, So there is something like that. It's also a very social moon. So if you're going out in the evening to like go dancing and be with your friends or all of that feels pretty nice. Once the moon goes into Aquarius at 10:16 p.m., its last aspects of the day are these sextiles to Saturn and Neptune. So there's, with the air and fire of this aspect, it has to do with ideas and action and, going forward in that way. There's something serious here with Saturn and something confusing here or dissolving or not quite clear. We could be feeling not quite clear about the ways that we want to go forward, but somehow there's just maybe a resolve in this moment. The evening doesn't feel necessarily clear, but the aspects are somewhat flowing. So I would say just take good responsibility for your side of the street, especially if you're out there with your partner or in a relationship for Valentine's Day, and have at it. February 15th is the sun's day. Sundays are good for creativity and connection, being with your friends, being creative in general. Sun loves being in Leo. Doesn't necessarily love being in Aquarius, but it's definitely putting a highlight on the collective right now, the collective's goals and aims and what it wants to do. We are now in the period of time where we are just merely days from the eclipse. There's only two aspects we need to discuss today. 6:10 a.m., we have the moon conjunct Pluto, feeling intensely about something with the almost the emotional clarity to get down to the depths or what we need to really be grappling with. Pluto has to do with the underworld and with secrets. This could be some sort of almost plundering of information. This is the ability to go deep. Sun is square Uranus, which was going to be at 9:01 p.m., so later on in the day. And I don't know if maybe it's going to feel like we're just, especially because we're in eclipse season, that we're in this like liminal space where something is on the precipice of happening. And certainly because Uranus is in play here, especially with the sun in the square, like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And certainly I think that this aspect could bring that up. The sun square Uranus aspect happens at 27 degrees, which is almost the eclipse degree. We're a couple days from the eclipse. So this has to do with some eclipsing of perhaps authority figures of the collective. Maybe the collective learns something, something comes to light that is pushing us to take some sort of action. We know what's going on in the world right now. There's a lot of things about our authority figures that we need to know about, or we need to reckon with, all of us. We don't get to hide from the things that are going on in the world around us. We all are members of this world and of society and our neighbors, and we cannot turn away. And I think this aspect has something that says you don't get to turn away from this. You do not. So knowing that this aspect will be specifically spicy for those of you who have fixed planets at the last degrees, I would say, especially, the 26 to 29 degrees of the fixed signs, there's likely something in here for you. The fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So wherever that thing is that you are now aware of that feels potentially like a crisis, it's coming up so that you can deal with it. So just know that. February 16th is Monday. We made it through the week, y'all. Monday is the moon's day. We have moon in revolutionary, detached Aquarius, getting very, very, very close. It's in the dark of the moon. We can't see it right now because it is under the sun's beams. It's getting closer to the sun. We could be feeling very, very tired, lethargic, maybe even emotionally overwhelmed, burnt up a bit because of the balsamic waning moon phase that's happening today, especially. So if you're feeling pretty tired, that makes sense. So we are going to get moon conjunct Mars at 10:09 a.m. It feels impassioned and inflamed a bit, passionate about something, passionate about the actions you're trying to take to support your community, or it feels very revolutionary, wanting to stand up for whatever you think is right, really wanting to take actions that bring on your own freedom or collective freedom as well. But I also think we're feeling tired. This is exhausting. It could also just be angry. Biggest aspect of the day is we have Mercury trine Jupiter, right brain, left brain union. Mercury and Jupiter is like ideas and broader thoughts or philosophies are now in this flow. It feels like poetry, though. We have Mercury in Pisces, the sign of its fall and detriment, and Jupiter in Cancer, retrograde, and also a feeling watery sign. The nice thing is Jupiter receives Mercury because Mercury is in its sign. So there's something here for us in terms of how we are communicating and taking care of our ideas and the ways that we're speaking about maybe taking care of each other or taking care of home. Use this to have the sorts of conversations that have larger frameworks. I think this is a good time to sit and think about your larger goals and how to align that to what you ultimately want to do or how you really want to be connected in this world. This is a time to think in broad strokes and not in the minutia. Don't get hindered by the minutia of things. Broad strokes here. Write those ideas down, those paintbrush strokes, the ideas that have to do with color or ephemeral vision, right? It's a beautiful time to sit in meditation, prayer, speaking prayers. How do you want to go forward? So I really like that aspect. Speaking your prayers and intentions. Last aspect of the day, 6 and 19 p.m., moon sextile Chiron, emotional healing, intuitiveness, empathy. This is a nice part of our day, right? It's from the afternoon into the evening. I really, really like that for us because tomorrow we have an eclipse. Tuesday, February 17th, is Mars's day. And we have an eclipse in Aquarius. I'm going to put up the eclipse chart. Here's the eclipse chart. 4:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Solar annual eclipse. And I believe that means that we will see the ring around the sun as the moon kind of blocks it. Right? So this ring, the ring of fire. I should have looked at where it was going to be seen, but I didn't. Sorry about that. So things that we need to know about this eclipse in general is that this is a North Node eclipse. So it definitely has to do with new beginnings that are pushing us into the future, pushing us towards our destiny, pushing us towards our fate. This is about going forward, leaving something behind, going forward, right? This new moon is square Uranus in a third quarter square. Really, this is a crisis square. This is, sudden adjustments, disruptions, breaks and shocks because of this square from Uranus. Breakdowns can also mean breakthroughs and liberations. These brand new beginnings, this new moon here, have to do with authenticity, innovation, breaks from tradition, extremes, innovative ideas, rebellion, individualism. This new moon in Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn in Aries, which is conjunct Neptune. So it's like this new vision has to also do with the dissolving of various structures and governments and authorities and a new way of the collective going forward, leaving old structures behind, some sort of change and vision for the future. It's a powerful eclipse for sure. So if you have any planets in the fixed signs in these last degrees, know that this eclipse is probably impacting you. If you are in a profected year where the perfection has come to the moon or the sun, the eclipse is likely impacting you. Reminders that the eclipse doesn't necessarily eclipse everybody. Sometimes it misses people. And I think about this a lot, right? I think about the spiritual or mystical reasons why fate wouldn't pick up everybody and place them somewhere else. And I think it's because some people are already very much on the path that they need to be on, whereas some people have maybe strayed a little and need to be kind of course corrected. There's lots of ways that we could be thinking about that, but there is a brand new beginning that has to do with this brand new Aries point beginning that is definitely shocking and disruptive, that has to do with some sort of collective liberation. Yeah. So finding out where this is happening in your chart is important if you're aware of your rising sign. The next part of this podcast, I'm going to go through where it's happening, where this new beginning is happening in your chart so that you can just be aware, and where ultimately it will be impacting. So I'm going to keep that up on the screen and we'll go through. So Aries Rising. This eclipse is in the 11th house of friends, of hopes, and of groups. And this disruption or this liberation point or surprise could be coming from the area of money, livelihood, possessions. Maybe your values are being pressured to change, and it's changing the dynamic that's in your friend group. Ultimately, this is going to impact your sense of emotional security, maybe your ancestry, potentially your creativity. And right now you have a Saturn just now traversing your first house, which can feel like you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. You need to take responsibility for yourself. This can bring a sense of exhaustion to the body, the weight of the world. So be careful out there. Take care of yourself. And Taurus Rising, this eclipse, because you are a fixed baby, eclipse is in the 10th house of career, vocation, reputation, advancement. The disruption comes from yourself. Maybe you are trying to break free, and this creates some sort of big change in work or reputation. And ultimately, this is going to impact how you communicate, maybe your relationship with your siblings, or your relatives. And Saturn right now is in your 12th house. So maybe you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, or as Saturn ingresses the 12th, it brings working behind the scenes. Saturn rejoices in the 12th. It likes working in the dark, working in the quiet. This could be a time where you are taking on more responsibilities and dealing with those who are sick or being of service. There could be themes around sacrifice. You could clean up your side of the street around victimhood, maybe take on some psychological services in order to do a clean sweep of the 12th house. Gemini Rising. This eclipse is going to be in the 9th house, and the 9th house is beliefs, mystical matters, astrology, higher learning, travel, long distance travel especially. So there's something here for you in the 9th house, and the shock or disruption could be coming from the 12th house, which is psychic suffering, need to break free of something that is so deep and different that it changes and creates this new beginning in how you're believing something or the endeavors of learning something new. And it is going to impact ultimately your sense of value, maybe in your resources, right? Because you're dealing with maybe this heaviness behind the scenes, you take on a new university program. You go and take another technical course or something that ultimately is going to impact your livelihood, you know? Saturn is now in the 11th house of alliances and friends. You know, cleaning up your side of the street and how you are working inside of these groups. There could be, you know, a whittling down or a constriction of your friend groups. Maybe you have to cull or take care of getting rid of some of the people in your life, in your friend groups or alliances, or maybe you take on some sort of responsibility to take care of this space. Cancer rising. The eclipse is going to be in the 8th house of other people's money, resources, like the resources we share, joint financial ventures, also endings. The shock or change could happen because a goal was fulfilled or some sort of new alliance has come in, which has changed the dynamic of the joint venture. And I feel like this particular eclipse really has to do with finances. It really has to do with resources, how you resource, the sorts of ways that you are dealing with money of other people. This could have to do with inheritances, certainly, even taxes. So just know that ultimately there's a value thing happening here. It could be about money and also how you identify with these things. It also impacts your first house. So it's important for me to say that it impacts your first and second houses. Leo Rising. Leo Rising, the eclipse is going to happen in your 7th house of relationships. Maybe you meet someone completely new beginning. This also is the house of marriage. This is also the house of business partnerships and also legal battles and open enemies. People that you know are your open enemies. That person hates me, right? Some sort of new beginning here. Uranus is coming in from the 10th house. It has been shaking up the area of reputation, vocation, and career. And this ultimately is going to impact your identity and also maybe some ways that you've been suffering. And Saturn is now in the 9th house of religion, belief, higher education and learning. So when Saturn goes through the 9th, you could be taking on a new program that you're learning, taking on some sort of responsibility in that world. Maybe whatever you're learning needs to slow down, right? Maybe you've been on the fast track in some place and now there's some sort of limit or test or trial that's placed here in the 9th house of long distance travel, of higher education, of religion. Maybe you take on a program in a religion that requires intense and long, arduous study. This also might be a place where you're being encouraged to change your beliefs or take responsibility for the things that you believe. Virgo Rising. The eclipse is happening in your 6th house of daily routines, menial work, service, illness, and injury. Uranus is going to be coming in and disrupting from the place of higher belief, God, long distance travel, mystical matters, higher education. Ultimately, this is going to impact how you interact in groups, maybe what your hopes and dreams are. And also the 12th house of sickness and suffering and secret enemies. Right now, Saturn is in your 8th house, which is other people's money, joint money with another person, business partnerships that include finances, things that become more intimate, right? it's intimate when you share and commingle money, because unfortunately money is very important. So we need to clean up our side of the street when it comes to joint ventures and how money is shared inside of relationships. And also, if you have not been so good with your taxes, don't play around with Saturn in your eighth. Maybe there was something that had to do with, you know, working with other people's money, and now there's some sort of legal constraint that is throwing you a curveball, and now you need to change your tactic. Libra Rising. The eclipse is happening in your fifth house of creativity, gambling, and children. And there is a disruption coming from other people's money, the joint ventures and financial ventures that you have with people, inheritance even. And ultimately, this is going to impact your reputation, the work that you do, your vocation, and also groups and alliances, right? The people that are in your that are your fans, or your work friends, or the alliances you've created as a result of your career. Saturn is now in the seventh house, which means you got to get real serious about your relationships, making sure that they're the right ones, making sure that you are both and all really doing good with better boundaries, right? This is a time for maybe even culling various relationships that no longer serve you, taking responsibility for yourself inside of relationships and partnerships. Clean up your side of the street when it comes to how you are inside of relationship, and you hopefully will be pretty good. You could feel like somebody's trying to battle you from the outside, putting pressure on you to change your identity. This is a time to be patient inside of developing relationships as well. Scorpio Rising. The eclipse will be happening in your fourth house of home, ancestry, and hidden matters. So something could be coming up as a result of some sort of shock coming from close relationships, from your marriage or business partnerships. And ultimately, this is going to impact maybe your faith, your belief, confidence, your ability to learn new things. Saturn's now in your sixth house of illness, of daily activity, right? The day-to-day things that you do to keep life going, and maybe even service. So you may be taking on a new way of eating. You might be feeling like you have to completely change and find better structure inside of your day-to-day activities. You may have to take a different sort of responsibility and reckoning for your health. Clean up your diet, clean up your day-to-day. Take responsibility for your day-to-day. Saturn in the sixth can be a bit tough because it does have to do with the house of illness. So taking care of your health is absolutely imperative at this time. Sagittarius Rising, your eclipse is going to be in your third house of siblings, short distance travel, right? It could be your car, and also communication. The disruption or shift or surprise could be coming from your daily routine, needing to change all of a sudden, sudden illness, suddenly being called to be of service. And ultimately, this eclipse is going to be impacting your eighth and ninth houses, which is other people's money, joint finances, inheritances, and also, the ninth house, which is of belief, can be of confidence. Certainly travel matters and higher education. Maybe being called to be in care or service of somebody in your neighborhood or a sibling pushes you to take on a new journey in education. Like, actually, I need to learn this thing. I need to know this thing. I want to change how I'm living my life in order to go forward. Saturn is now in your 5th house, which for a Sag rising, I think could feel a bit like a wah-wah, because it's really your house of joy. And so there could be a limit in how much joy you're getting to experience, how much fun is getting to happen, because Saturn in the 5th is not very much fun. If you have children, there could be extra responsibilities being placed on you at this time. Creative projects could take a lot more out of you. There is a imperative to slow down here. So if you have kids, take the time to be with them or to learn what you need to learn about them and their lives. There's a creative project, this is making wise investments on maybe your materials or how you choose to express yourself. Take the time. Capricorn Rising. The eclipse is in the 2nd house of livelihood, possessions, and resources. Also talents, right? Planets in the 2nd house can say something about like what you're talented in, what you're good at, or what you can use as a resource. Uranus is in the 5th house, shaking up the house of creativity and children. So this disruption could be to your finances because of something having to do with your kids. And ultimately, this impacts the 7th and the 8th houses, which all has to do with relationships and joint finances, business partnerships, taxes. It seems very financial, Capricorn. That's what it seems like to me. Financial, this is a eclipse that has to do with financial matters that impact your relationships to other people and also to their money. Aquarius Rising. This eclipse is happening in your 1st house of self, of identity and body. Uranus is angular in the 4th, the structures of your home, family, ancestry. Is kind of throwing you a curveball, maybe forcing you to make some sort of change, forcing you to make a change in identity, how you are going out into the world. This is going to impact your day-to-day habits, maybe even your health, and likely also your relationships, how you function in relationships, right? There's a new moon in your 1st and 7th. If there's a new moon in your 1st house, this automatically has to do with your 7th house of relationship of other. Pisces Rising. The eclipse is going to be in your 12th house, so I don't necessarily know how much it's going to come up in the house of hidden affairs, of sickness, secret enemies, but also of sacrifice, maybe being called to sacrifice. Uranus is going to be in your 3rd house of communication, information, siblings, relatives, and neighborhood. So there's some sort of shock, shake-up, right, in the 3rd house of maybe siblings, and you're called to be of service, to sacrifice something, and ultimately it impacts your 5th and 6th houses, which can be, creativity, certainly joy, your sense of joy in the moment, children, your day-to-day routines and activities, and also things having to do with illness. Saturn is now in your 2nd house, so we're going to be cautious with our finances for the next 2.5 years as it traverses the 2nd house. Getting very real, very, very real about what your finances are and how they should be, what you need to do, taking responsibility for your money, getting the accountant, all of that. February 26th to March 1st, Mars is going to go and hit that eclipse degree of 28. So it kind of reinvigorates that house that the eclipse is happening for you. So I'm a Virgo rising, right? So ultimately, there's something in the 6th house that I'll need to be paying attention to, and could be lighting that up for me again. I'm hoping it's just my daily activities change, but who the frick knows, because eclipses are very, very hard to predict, and you shouldn't try in general. Okay. Oh, the last thing I wanted to mention is that the eclipse is hitting the US's chart, the Sibley chart, our third house moon, our revolutionary, freedom thinking, freedom needing moon is going to wake this moon up, bringing us into maybe a more revolutionary space collectively. In mundane charts, which this would be a mundane chart, it's not the chart of a person, it's the chart of a country, right? The moon means common people, women, crowds, and public opinion. This is a new place. Public opinion for our roots, our baseline, right? Because it's ruled by this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, essentially, and this dissolving of our roots here. We have, there's a dissolving of the fourth house is the common people versus the aristocracy. I think that's very interesting. And the eclipse is square Uranus in the sixth house of like common people. It also has to do with public health, military services, civil service workers, and trade unions. I'm wondering if there's a revolution on behalf of trade unions coming together and saying like, no, we need to strike. We need to do something here. This is a very significant eclipse for the US because it is directly impacting the moon, the people. So I hope that it's just a call for us to further wake up. That's what I am hoping for. So good luck, everybody. All right. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. I know that was a lot, and take care of yourselves. Hey, thank you for listening to today's Astro Weather with me. I'm Sydney. As a reminder, I'm always open to seeing both new and my beloved returning clients. My website is ddastrology.com. That is D as in dog, astrology.com to check me out, and just click the email buttons in order to schedule with me. If you're into a more conversational feel with your podcast and content, I have a podcast called BS Astrology with my fellow Mercurial Mommy Bender, and we put out episodes every Sunday for the week. Just search BS Astrology on YouTube or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts, including Spotify, Audible, and more. Have a good day.